probably gonna sound like, I'm out in the desert today with Zach Fowler, and our goal is to record video and make it look like film using the Dehancer plugin. If you've been following my channel for any length of time, you know that I love a film emulator. I've never used Dehancer until they reached out to me and said, hey, we'll give you a subscription if you make a video reviewing our plugin. I'm like, absolutely, I would love to review your plugin. I'd love to use your plugin. So that's what this video is going to be about. We're going to talk about film emulation, what it is, and then we're going to look at Dehancer, the pros, the cons, and we're going to film some stuff in the desert, and hopefully nothing bad happens to us. I was first introduced to film emulation when I saw Clapping for the Wrong Reasons, which was not film emulated. They did what is known as a film out, which is when you take the digital final edit and essentially copy it onto film and then copy it back to digital, and it makes it look like it's film. But when I saw it, I was like, how can I recreate that? So I got interested in film emulation, which is literally just making digital video look like film. And I know some of you are probably wondering, I shoot on the Sony a7S III. I put on this Tiffin Black Mist 1/2 filter on the end of the lens. It's important for this process to know what color profile you're shooting at and what gamma you're shooting at. I'm shooting at S-Log3 and S-Gamma 3 Cine. If you don't know what you're shooting at, it's probably Rec 709. Unless it's an iPhone, then it's Rec 709A. This is what it looks like straight out of the camera. And then this is converted to Rec 709 so that it looks just like a regular video that you might take on your phone or something. And then instead of converting to Rec 709, if you run it through Dehancer, this is kind of what it looks like. This is an A/B of what a regular camera would look like and what the dehanced video would look like, just to give you a sample. Okay, and now quickly I'm going to walk you through my process to dehance so you can judge if you want to do it. This is the footage that I'm going to use. It's shot S-Log3. And then this is what that footage looks like in a Premiere timeline. I'm going to walk you through how I would export a final film. So imagine these two cuts are the final film. I export it as a QuickTime ProRes 422. If you want it to be extra crispy, you could do a quad 4. But for my YouTube video coloring, I just do 422 HQ. What's most important is you want to export at maximum depth. That way you get the full color depth of whatever you shot at. Then I'm going to fire up DaVinci Resolve. Dehancer has all these other options that you can use, but I already color in DaVinci, so it just makes sense for me to use the DaVinci plugin. You want to navigate to that export you just made, and you want to right click and go to Scene Cut Detection, and then click Auto Scene Cut Detection. And then it will just add this green line where all the cuts are. It's not perfect, so you might want to double check it. But once you know that the cuts are where they're supposed to be, you hit Add Custom Media Pool, hit yes to changing the frame rate, and then you want to select all of the media that you just created, right click, and then create a new timeline based on selection. Also just double check that these settings match the resolution you want to export at. Then you click color at the bottom here, and this is the node structure of DaVinci Color. Hopefully you know how to do that. I'm going to set a hotkey to create a new node because for some reason I didn't already have that, and it's so annoying to right click all the time. Once you do that, you create a new node, drop it in, then you go to Effects, and you bring in the Dehancer plugin effect and drag it onto that node. As you can see, it's already started to do something, but it has the wrong input color space. So what I'm going to do in the Dehancer input section is navigate to my Sony a7S III and make sure that the input color space matches my camera. While we're in the input section of Dehancer, this is where you would want to do your color correction, you know, white balance, exposure, that sort of stuff, before you add the grade. Once that's done, it's time for the fun part, and that's adding the actual film emulation. Dehancer has so many film profiles to choose from, and that, in my opinion, is one of the things that makes it a lot better than the other emulators that I've used so far. And if you go to their website, you can see all of the films and kind of learn about the films, why those films would have been used in real life, which I think is really neat. All right, now I'm going to quickly go through the rest of the things of Dehancer. Each one is replicating a real life film process. First one is developer. This basically just lets you color correct the film profile to make it whatever you want because it's not real. Second is compression. Basically, film doesn't clip as quickly as digital does, so this is replicating that. Next is expand. This is how you control the contrast. This is a huge one. You're going to come back to this again after you apply some other effects. It really just makes your image look crispy. The print section lets you choose which film stock your film would be printed on, because obviously when they project a film in a theater, they're not using the original film. And so this gives you a second layer of complexity to the color profile, to all of the other tweaks that you make to the film. Okay, I just had to look up what color head did because I did not use it. Basically, this is tweaking the printer head of the actual machine that would be printing the film. All right, film grain. Oh, it was already enabled. Okay, so film grain obviously is exactly what it sounds like, the grain. And what dehancer lets you do is really fine tune which kind of grain you want there to be. This is an area where looking up references is a really great way to figure out what kind of look you want. There's a lot of really amazing references on YouTube. I will show some of them on the screen now. I'll link to them in the description. Basically, you just like find what you like and then work backwards to replicate that look in the grain. And while dehancer's grain creation technology is really advanced, this is an area where posting onto YouTube is going to drastically change the way it looks. YouTube compression doesn't like grain very much, so it won't look exactly like it does when you're editing it. That being said, the best thing to keep in mind with compression on YouTube is that you always want to export a 4K file, even if it was only 1080p when you were editing it, because that will save you in the compression on YouTube. Next up is halation. This is most notable in the highlights, bright light sources. They turn a little orange, they get those orange halos. It also affects the midtones. Bloom creates fall off in the highlights. I'm not going to use this because I have the black premise filter on my lens, which basically creates the same thing except optically, which isn't exactly the same. You can make the argument they're different. Anyway, I'm not going to use bloom. Film breath is basically the light leakage at the bottom of the frame from frame to frame, so it kind of flickers. Then up next is gate weave. This is the literal change in position from frame to frame as film goes through the camera or through the projector. And this is a really cool effect. It's very subtle, but it really makes it feel like film. Overscanning is sort of exactly what it sounds like. You are just replicating when a lab scans the film wider than normal. They're not punching into just what you shot. They're showing the perforations of the film. And dehancer gives you a lot of options in terms of what kind of frame size, what kind of film size, that sort of thing. Then we have vignetting. Anyone who's been on Instagram since 2010 knows what vignetting is. It's just darkening the corners. But you can also lighten the corners if what you shot already has vignetting, which I thought was neat. And here, like I said, I've gone back to expanding to increase the contrast a little bit. And oh, I forgot to add film damage. Okay, so film damage is one of those classic emulation tools where basically you add the scratches and the hairs and the bright spots, and it's definitely something where less is more, in my opinion. So now that I feel good about this, I'm going to copy and paste from one thumbnail to the next the film emulation onto this other clip. And if I wanted to tweak it separately, I could, but I'm pretty pleased with the way that it matches, with the way that it looks. So I'm going to just export this the way that it is. So to export, you click the little rocket ship that brings you to the delivery page. I'm going to export as individual clips. That way I can overlay it into Premiere. And for exporting, we want to make sure we send it out at the same resolution we brought it in so that we don't lose any quality. We brought it in as ProRes 422HQ. We're going to send it out as ProRes 422HQ. Back in Premiere, we're going to load in those clips we just exported, and we're going to lay them on top, and then we could export this as our final colored project if we wanted, or if you still had to do sound or something, you could do that. But for me, this is done. So here we go. These are the final colors. Now at this point, some of you might be wondering, Zach, what if we don't have a big fancy camera that shoots S-Log? What if we don't have your amazing videographer skills? Well, here's something I shot in 2013 when I did not know anything. I shot it on a Canon Rebel T3i from Costco. Here it is in dehancer. It looks pretty good. Obviously, like, the highlights are hard to compress. It's a lot of lost information, but I think it looks really good. And here it is imagined as Super 16. I think it looks pretty awesome. So yeah, I think this plugin makes even amateur looking footage look really good. And if you don't even want to take it into Premiere, they have an app called the Dehancer app. You can just take stuff you shot on your phone, run it through the app, and then it looks pretty cool. Alright, so now that you've seen what it can do, let's talk review. Pros and cons. Cons first. The biggest con, I think, for most people is going to be the price. It is not a cheap product. It is a premium product. You're paying premium prices. I think that's going to turn a lot of people off, especially since there are cheaper alternatives. You can save 10% on Dehancer though if you use promo code ZAQ, Z-A-Q. So maybe that'll turn the tides for people, but I think that's the biggest con of Dehancer. Another con is that, and this is very, 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 very minor, and I'm probably the only person to be annoyed by this, but when you do film destruction or film grain, it's constantly updating because it is generating it all the time. So if you play it through once and you play it through a second time, the grain and the scratches and stuff will be different each time you press play. So there's a chance that if you really like a scratch, it won't be on the export, or there will be scratches on the export that you won't like. So it can really go either way. Pros, there are a lot of pros. The main one is the control.
that you have over like tuning a look. You can basically fine tune every single possible thing to make it look exactly the way you want, which is really nice if you're trying to emulate a very specific film look. They also have a lot of options in terms of film profiles, which is amazing. And since it's pretty much digitally recreating all of the processes of film development, you have a lot of complexity in the look. And the other thing is ease of use. A lot of the other cheaper film emulations are very complex. You have to really deconstruct the emulation in order to tweak things to get to look the way that you want it to look, especially if you want to go softer with the look. Like if you want less intense look, like if you just want minor film emulation, it's really hard to get in other emulation softwares. But in Dehancer, it is very easy to walk it back, to bring it up, to change this, to change that. It's very user-friendly, and that I think is a huge win for Dehancer. But yeah, so that's my showcase / review of Dehancer. I think it's a really awesome plugin. I'm very grateful that they gave me this opportunity to take a look at it and review it. I think I'm definitely going to be using it in the future going forward as my default emulation tool, just because it's so intense and so easy to use. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think. Like I said, there's a promo code in the description, and also check out all of the other film videos that I mentioned in this video down in the description.
I worked for an organization called Is that
Kendall Harley. And the girl is
Maybell? You finish up with the deal and I'll be back in a little bit.
What should I tell Harley?
Nothing.